This is Dr. Lisa Marie Bobby, and you're listening to the Love, Happiness, and Success podcast. All relationships have ups and downs, and it can be hard to tell the difference between a normal rough patch or a sign that something more serious is going on in a relationship. So in today's episode, we're talking about the signs that your relationship might really be in trouble and what you can do to get things back on track.
There's a hand at dusk in the wake, in the water, it's mine. Can you take the palm of it forever?
We are listening to the fleeting gorgeousness of the band Swan Lake, this ephemeral, temporary supergroup that came together in the aughts and did amazing things briefly and then dispersed back to their usual haunts. But this song is called A Hand at Dusk, and I think it's just so poignant. You know, if you listen to the lyrics, it's really about somebody who loves and is attached to somebody very much, but is also sitting with the reality of very real problems that they don't know if they're going to overcome together. At least that's what I read into it. So beautiful song, and I thought really set the tone for our conversation today, because today we're talking about something that is extraordinarily important for so many different reasons. And actually, I originally recorded a podcast on this topic many, many years ago. It was actually one of the first podcasts I did, and I, recently, because I've been doing this podcast for a while now, I have almost 300 episodes or something. Part of what I've been doing is just going back through and thinking about, what are the most important ideas and concepts and things that would really be most helpful to you based on the kinds of questions I'm getting from you, the feedback that you've shared with me, which I really, really appreciate. But thinking about re-exploring some topics, some concepts that we have in the past, but really thinking about how I have grown and evolved over the almost 10 years since maybe I first recorded it, and thinking about what could I improve or add to this in order for it to be even more helpful and impactful for you. And so if you're one of the many who've been getting in touch with me lately on my website, growingself.com, or through social media, thank you. I am paying attention to what you're sharing, and I appreciate your vulnerability and just authenticity when you let me know what's going on in your life and what I can help you with. That helps me know what to do here to be of better service to you. So thank you so much for reaching out to me and letting me know what's on your mind, and also certainly for taking the time to listen to this. And so when it comes to today's topic, signs your relationship is failing, like we're having a problem. The reason why I really wanted to re-explore this is because it can be very difficult sometimes to tell the difference between what is a, air quote, normal garden variety thing that will sort of resolve itself versus what is a sign of something that is not going to resolve itself and that does actually require intervention and attention in order for it to not ultimately destroy your relationship. And I might be sounding hyperbolically dramatic right now, but really, I mean, I am a marriage counselor, and I know too well from tragic experience that one of the number one reasons why couples counseling fails and people break up, even if they go to marriage counseling, is because they have waited too long to get help. That it has gone past the point of no return, and when it does, you cannot put that back together again, not the best marriage counselor in the world. And I've had these conversations with couples. It's horrible. I want to prevent everybody in the world from being in this position, hence the podcast. But it's therefore crucially important for you, for all of us, to be able to sort of assess our own situation in our relationship so that we can understand what's going on, and is this something that I need to do something about versus, what can be normal relational turbulence that, maybe we just need to read a good book together, listen to some podcasts together, kind of maybe still take some action, but, we're not spiraling down the drain right now, because it can be easy to miss. And the sad reality is that many times people do not appreciate how serious the relationship issues they are experiencing actually are. They minimize them. They can minimize their partner's feelings, saying, I am not okay. And so this podcast, I hope, will give you more information. Because the other thing is that all relationships have ups and downs. This idea that there's some fictional couple somewhere that is always happy and never has conflict and always is on the same page, that is not a thing. That is not a expectation or even an ideal of a healthy, happy partnership. I mean, we are all growing and evolving, and normal, happy, healthy, functional relationships, two people are coming together from time to time and having passionate conversations about important things for the purpose of connecting authentically, solving problems together, giving each other the opportunity to understand each other in a new way. It is only through these growth moments that we often have the opportunity to do that. So this is a wonderful thing. And it can look like and feel like, air quote, conflict when it is happening, but that kind of reckoning and addressing issues, talking about feelings, understanding each other better, growing together, maybe making some changes in a relationship as a result of those conversations. That's what this looks like when it's working really, really well. So it's not the absence of fighting. It is not the absence of conflict. It is using moments of disconnection or having differences really productively and constructively. And so this is a good thing. And if that's not happening in a relationship, meaning that you're not having opportunities to address differences or talk about your feelings with each other, particularly the dark feelings, that is actually a sign that your relationship might not be as strong as you think it is. So I just want to dispel any ideas you might have around some mythological, happy relationship. Happy, healthy relationships go to deep places, but they do it productively and they do it constructively. And a failing relationship, a relationship that is really in trouble, it feels different, it looks different, and that's what we're going to be talking about today, because I want you to be able to leave this podcast able to assess what's happening, again, so that you can make decisions. And also, I want to be talking with you about some strategies and things that you can do if you do look at your relationship and think, oh, crap. I also want you to leave with some ideas about, okay, so here's what we can do to get this back on track, as opposed to just, passively letting this thing continue to fall apart, because nobody wants that. So, such an important topic. I think we should be teaching these kinds of things in schools personally, because relationships are just so important to the quality of our lives, and they're really quite complex. And unless you have had the opportunity to study relationship systems, it can be hard to understand what's really happening and what the reactions you're having, or maybe your partner having, really, really mean, and certainly how to break out of negative cycles and create real change in your relationship. I am, by training, if you haven't heard this podcast before, my background, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm also a licensed psychologist, and I'm a board-certified coach. But really, I think my professional identity and what's nearest and dearest to my heart is marriage and family therapy, as couples counseling. And I have just sat with so many couples who are, either in a place where they can repair their relationship, or sat with couples who are in a place where relationship repair is not possible or is no longer possible, which is always the most tragic. And I've also, worked with a lot of people in the aftermath of a relationship that has ended, either, breakup recovery, divorce recovery. So I've seen this from a lot of different angles. I also do premarital counseling, with young couples or I shouldn't say young. There are people who do premarital counseling who are not young, and that's even better, who are, just there to try to learn what to do to have the happiest marriage possible. And then also dating coaching, like working with people on how to create a healthy new relationship from scratch. So I love all of these different aspects of it, but because of these different elements of my practice, I think I have a multifaceted view of these things, and I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to share it with you. And so what I mentioned just a minute ago, in my role, the most difficult moments that I've had, well, there have been a lot of difficult moments. Anybody who chooses the vocation of becoming a therapist is signing up for that. But, some of the hardest for me have been when I have sat with a couple and am understanding and helping them understand. And it's usually actually, helping one partner understand that the other person is done with the relationship, that even though they are sitting in my office, they have shown up for marriage counseling. I'm a, reasonably decent marriage counselor and I want to help them, that there is nothing that is salvageable. And this is it. Typically, the reason that happens is because one person does not yet understand that, and the person that they have been in a relationship with has actually been on this off-ramp for a while. Perhaps they just asked for a divorce or let them know that they were done, and the person who didn't realize the extent of the problems was surprised by this. They feel blindsided. They're like, oh, let's go to marriage counseling. Let's fix it. And so here they are. And there is nothing that can be done. The motivation of the partner who wants to end the relationship for coming to marriage counseling in these moments is often with an interest in helping the partner that they are leaving connect with me, so that partner has some emotional support after they say goodbye. That's the reality. It's called a drop-off. in the business. So that's a thing. And I hate that. And I think it's just so sad, because the reality is many, many times that if people had understood what was going on and had known what action to take, 2, 3, 4, 5 years previously, that could have been such a different outcome for them. So that's the reason that I am re-recording and expanding this podcast for you, because it's so important. I don't want anybody to have to go through that experience. And I'm glad you're hearing this today. And also, if anything we talk about today makes you think of somebody that you love or care about who might be in this situation but might not realize it yet, please share this with them. It will help them. And even if they listen to it and they're like, no, that's not me, at least you tried. And on this note, so in addition to this podcast, on my website, growingself.com, I have written a whole library of articles, in efforts to be helpful to people seeking information at these fork in the road moments. And so there's one collection on my site. It's called Marriage Counseling Questions. And there are extensive informational articles in there, like when to get marriage counseling that, I put there in the hopes that somebody would find that and be like, oh, okay, yeah, we need marriage counseling. Let's do something about it, whether or not they work with me. But it's really can make such a difference on their life trajectory, whether or not a family system is able to heal and grow and strengthen, or whether it turns into a divorce situation, particularly if there are kids involved. I feel that it's my responsibility to do everything in my power to try to help people because, it does matter. It does have consequences. So again, thank you for listening and thank you for sharing. On with our topic. So let's talk about why relationships fail, first of all, so that you can kind of get a lay of the land here. And I have discussed some of this on other podcasts. I think I did one that was actually titled Why Relationships Fail. You'll want to check that one out. But, in others discussing what happens between two people. I think one of the podcasts I did was when to call it quits in a marriage, in a relationship, I think is what it was. So there's more detail on this. But briefly, relationships do not often explode. Every once in a while, some crazy thing happens, an affair was discovered or some other super traumatic thing. And it's just like a, big explosion and it's done. What is actually much more common is that there are systemic failures that occur over time. There's a cascading series of problems that, each of them on their own may not have even seemed super consequential, but over time and as they sort of pile up and build up, it erodes an attachment bond to the point where it can't come back again, right? And so ultimately, why a relationship will end is that one, sometimes both, but usually one partner will have been trying to improve things, work on things, make things different, talk about important stuff, and consistently, in a variety of different ways, gotten the message over and over and over again, change is not possible. This is never going to be different. This is never going to be what you want it to be. And there is no hope left here. You cannot find what you want in this situation. The well is dry. The only option is to endure what this is, which you don't want, or be done and try to find a happier, more satisfying relationship elsewhere. And so that's it, really, in a nutshell. It can have lots of other details to that story, obviously, but those are the mechanics of a failing relationship. And so understanding that in very broad strokes allows you to understand that along the way, there are many, many opportunities to change that narrative by helping each other have better experiences with each other that say, oh, there is hope. This could potentially change. I could keep trying and trust that things may be different or get better. What is difficult, though, is that when people kind of get past the point of no return, sometimes I've seen the partner who maybe hadn't realized what a big deal it was previously come into this with a ton of motivation to have things be different and start trying really hard, saying all the right things, doing the things, that their partner may have been asking for a long time. But because that attachment bond has already been damaged to the extent that it has, it doesn't matter. They're like, I hear you saying the right things and I see you doing the things that I've been asking for a long time, but it's broken. My desire to have this with you is no longer there. my trust in you has been so fundamentally broken. For some, it's even like the fact that I had to try as hard as I did and had to essentially terrify you with the threat of divorce before you listened to me means that this is just too hard, and that I don't trust that going forward you are going to follow through, because I've been disappointed by you so many times. So it's very, very, very important that when we are experiencing normal and expected relational friction and rough patches and have stuff to work through, that we, if we want our relationships to be healthy and to persist, we need to be interacting with our partners in ways that demonstrate our trustworthiness, our respect and validation of their perspective, our desire for them to, have a good time in their relationship with us, right? And if we're not doing that, they are, what they're hearing, what they're experiencing, even if we're not saying it out loud, is that it doesn't matter what they want. It doesn't matter how they feel. It doesn't matter what they ask for. This isn't going to be different. And that is the most toxic message of all to be sending. So it's very, very important that we are actively responsive along the way. Not that we need to be exactly what our partner wants us to be either, right? I mean, we have to do this together, and there needs to be a give and take, but there needs to be a give and take, right? So signs of a failing relationship. So what I mean by that is that what has been happening, whether or not either of you have intended it, has been toxic and unhelpful enough that it is actually beginning to erode that basic trust in each other, so that the normal and expected courageous conversations and passionate conflict that is a requirement of being in a healthy relationship, that when a couple has been trying to do that, it has not been successful. It has not been productive. It has disintegrated into either arguments, or people are feeling invalidated or shut down or dismissed, or there's defensiveness, or maybe there's a lot of criticism. Maybe there's a lot of emotional unsafety, right? But whatever it is, that the process of going into differences and then coming out the other side, having become stronger for it, is not happening. So that in these moments, conflict is creating separation. It is not creating connection. It's creating disconnection. And so all couples have those moments, right? I mean, not every conversation is perfect, and none of us handle these things very well all of the time. But, when more often than not, it is not constructive at the end of it, meaning that it's not leading to deeper connection or positive change, that over time a relationship will start to fail because of that. And so the signs that is happening already, the one thing that I would look for is signs that your attachment feels threatened. And so what I mean by that, long-term relationships, when we have our irreplaceable other, right? There's an attachment bond that is forged in the beginning by feelings of romantic love. That's the magnetism that pulls us together and keeps us together for long enough for an attachment bond to form. An attachment bond is this feeling, it's a sense that you are my person. You are my partner. You are my soft place to fall. You are my friend. You are my family. I'm closest to you more than anybody else in the world. And I think the unspoken hope that we all have and deserve in a healthy, secure attachment bond could be summed up by this words, you're there for me. I trust you. I know that you are committed to me. I know that you care about me. I know that I'm important to you, right? And one of the signs that a relationship is failing is when we don't feel that way. Things feel shaky on foundational levels. And Maybe it is you're starting to doubt whether your partner really does have your best interests at heart. You may not trust them. And you know, there are different kinds of trust. Like there's certainly a trust around, is this person going to cheat on me? And if that is a thought in your head, yeah, that's also a sign that you should probably get into couples counseling to figure out what that's about. Because, you know, if you're actually really worried that your partner is cheating on you, either the attachment bond has been weakened to the point where they might be. And, you know, the fact that you're worrying about that, it needs to be addressed, because that's not, that is, could certainly be a sign that the relationship is failing. Or, you know, in the absence of that, if your partner isn't cheating on you and you persistently feel that way anyway, that could be also a sign of an insecure attachment style on your part, which will lead you to feel unsafe and anxious in most relationship systems. And that also needs to be addressed, because without intervention and without an active awareness of these tendencies inside of you to feel very anxious in relationships and emotionally unsafe, it will damage the fabric of the relationship to the point that it is much more likely to fail. So if you're worried that your partner is cheating on you, or vice versa, it's really important that you get help for that relationship, because that's a very serious warning sign. But also, I mean, even more subtly, you know, in the sense of an attachment threat or an attachment that's eroding, you know, trust can also just look like in basic ways. I don't trust that you're an emotionally safe person for me. I don't trust that if I did tell you how I was going to feel, that you would A, care, or B, you know, be loving or responsive or helpful to me. Like there's almost this feeling of what is the point of telling you how I'm going to feel? It isn't going to change anything anyway, kind of thing. That can be a sign of mistrust. Just be an uneasy feeling. But if you feel that way about your partner, particularly if it's a newer feeling, that's a sign that there is a deeper issue going on in the relationship than sort of day-to-day rough patches. It means that there's a threat to your attachment, and it's very important that you take that seriously and address any injuries that have happened to your attachment bond, or seek to actively repair it. Because, you know, just because you feel that way now, particularly if you've only started feeling that way, very possible that by dealing with it directly and having open, authentic, courageous conversations about that, you can have those connecting moments, understand each other differently, understand why that's been feeling the way it has, get everything out into the open, and then productively identify the things that each of you need in order to be actively repairing that, and then do it. And from that work, not only will your attachment bond be healed and strengthened, but you have also just developed a roadmap, a toolkit of when we feel this way, here's what we do to reconnect with each other rather than continuing to get more distant and drift apart. And that's the awesome thing about doing growth work together on your relationship, is that when you do it once, you are developing the skills, the awarenesses, the abilities really to be able to do that over and over and over again, because in every long-term relationship, there are seasons of life that, you know, help us grow closer. There are challenging times that just by virtue of our circumstances will pull partners away from each other. And so that in itself is not a bad thing. That is what happens. It's part of it, but it's having the awareness and the ability to correct that when it does happen is the thing that differentiates healthy, happy, enduring relationships from ones who fail. You know, it's not a character flaw. It's just oftentimes people whose relationships wind up on the rocks. They just didn't learn how. They didn't know what it was. They didn't know how to respond to it effectively. And so and again, nobody teaches you how to do this until you show up in couples counseling. So anyway, so the attachment bond thing is a really big deal. The other thing that I would like to share is that when relationships are distressed or threatened, so when an attachment bond is threatened, when there is that mistrust brewing, in addition to, maybe having thoughts or feelings about your partner that are unpleasantly new, right? This can look like things that people don't often recognize as being signs of attempts to recreate emotional safety or reconnect. So particularly in a distressed relationship system, what often happens is that one person, sometimes both, but usually one, will escalate in their efforts to be heard, understood, to have their distress be known, right? And what this can often look like and feel like is anger, criticism, hostility, in an increasingly escalated kind of way. And from an attachment perspective, this makes a lot of sense because it's like, if somebody's knocking on the door and there's no responsiveness, there's no understanding, they're knocking harder. They're saying like, no, really, this is a problem. No, listen to me. This is how I feel. And, until they're pounding on the door. And not infrequently, particularly as this is spiraling further and further into a negative cycle, getting increasingly hostile, sometimes openly hostile, critical, mean, contemptful. And it's coming from this original pain of, I need you to understand how hurt I am, how much of a problem this is for me. I feel like you don't care. What's wrong with you? Like trying to make their feelings be known. And, what we can ultimately learn in couples counseling, if growth and change is still possible, is being able to kind of crack into this all the way down into the original hurt of, you're hurting my feelings. Where are you? I thought we were in this together. I feel like I've lost my partner. I feel like you don't care about me anymore. Are you still there? But it can take a lot of effort and energy, even in marriage counseling, to help it kind of come back into this original conversation that's very authentic and vulnerable. And that can be hard to do. I mean, even as an experienced marriage counselor, it can take me many weeks, months to help a couple that has, where it's the negative cycle has taken over and it's become very angry, to help people even feel safe enough to have those kinds of conversations with each other again. But on the other side of this is that when somebody predictably escalates, there's very often a predictable withdrawal on the other side. Many times the withdrawal happens before the escalation happens. Not always. Sometimes they occur together. But on the other side of this, the other person also has had their trust damaged in their partner. It is turns into, I am experiencing you as emotionally unsafe. You are hostile. You are critical. You are always unhappy with me. I can never do anything right. I don't feel emotionally safe in getting close to you. I perceive you as being difficult and unreasonable and threatening and mean to me. And I need to do what I need to do in order to protect myself. And so that sounds like tuning you out. It sounds like getting defensive, invalidating you, not being responsive, avoiding conversations with you, being passive aggressive, telling you whatever you need to hear in the moment so you'll stop yelling at me and then I'm just going to go back to doing whatever I was doing before. That's what a failing relationship often looks like on the other side, is there's a lot of pulling away. And so this often happens in tandem, where repair attempts have been started. Repair attempts is, hey, I have a problem. I have a feeling. Can we do something about this? I miss you. I need you, XYZ. When that doesn't work, often is escalating into this pursue, withdraw pattern where the pursuer thinks and feels, anxious, angry. They don't want to be with me. They don't care. They don't love me. What is wrong with them? Why won't they? And then it turns into this laundry list of reasons why their partner is, a fundamentally bad person when it gets, to pretty advanced levels. And on the other side, a distancing partner feels overwhelmed, attacked, criticized, villainized, and will start to think they are irrational, they are impossible, they don't make sense. Talking with them is pointless. I'm going to avoid being around them, or be very, very, very careful, which is not conducive to the kind of authentic, courageous conversations that connect and that repair, right? So this cycle can show up in minor ways at the beginning, and we all have tendencies. Think about the last time you had even a mild disagreement with your partner. You probably, even if you didn't do it, felt like raising your voice or getting more, perhaps even aggressive in the way that you were communicating, or, had some thoughts like, whoa, this is super intense. Why are you making such a big deal out of this? Let's all just calm down. This isn't that big of a deal. So these are all natural and normal feelings in response to conflict, but it is, I think, easy to understand how potentially damaging and toxic these ideas and responses are when we engage in them. And so we need to really train ourselves and learn how to do the opposite in moments when things do feel tense and intense with our partners. How do we turn those moments into experiences that increase our understanding, help our partner feel heard, validated, supported, responsive, cared for? How do we do that? Those are relationship skills that are very important for all of us to learn how to do, because once we do, then in any situation where there's a difference or a moment where it could, turn into an unproductive conflict, we know what to do differently in order to have it be a really productive experience that grows our relationship instead of damages it. So that is the goal. But again, when that isn't happening, you can expect this cycle to intensify. The pursuing partner will get angrier and more critical and more hostile. A avoidant partner will get more so, dismissive, invalidating, defensive, refusing to talk at all, right? And so if you observe these patterns, not just starting to happen, but also amplifying that when you interact with each other, this is kind of the norm, that is a very, very serious and important sign that your relationship may be failing. And you can expect that without intervention, without intentionally doing something to break this negative cycle and learn how to change it into a positive cycle, this will get more extreme over time. So, this can look like being somewhat aggressive and hostile and angry and, kind of defensive and a little bit avoidant. But 3 years later, it becomes much more extreme and much more toxic because of the way that relationships work. Relationships are systems, meaning that we are all reacting to our partners, and our partners are reacting to us. So if you are experiencing your partner as being avoidant and invalidating, that will lead you to become more aggressive, more angry, more critical, which will then lead them to experience you as being more emotionally unsafe, more unreasonable, more difficult, more emotionally, threatening, which will lead them to become more avoidant of you. And so you can see how the system, it intensifies over time, right? It's a tropical storm that intensifies into a Category 5 hurricane. But even then, if that is happening, there can actually still be a lot of opportunity for growth and healing if we catch that in time. I mean, it's very, very, very common that couples are experiencing that when they come into couples counseling. So this is okay. And the reason why it's okay is because people they still care enough to be having feelings about the situation. Really. I mean, if somebody is angry, it means that they are feeling hurt underneath of it. And if somebody is still caring enough to feel hurt by you, like, I can work with that, right? It's when this takes it on to the next level, which is that when these cycles have been happening long enough that they begin to change the core beliefs and the inner narratives that we have about who our partners are, their character, what is possible. That starts to cross a line. And so when relationships are getting close to the end, negative narratives start to take hold. And that is when you start to believe awful things about your partner and their character. You have experienced a lot of difficult things with your partner, but in the absence of being able to resolve them, you are now attempting to make meaning about why that is. This person is emotionally immature. They are a terrible communicator. They are irresponsible. They are avoidant. They're a narcissist. Maybe they have autism. Maybe, there are all these different reasons why you are trying to make sense of the fact that you have been let down over and over and over again. Right? And it happens both ways. A core belief of this person is fundamentally unreasonable, fundamentally untrustworthy. We are not compatible. We want different things. We have different values. Our perspective of the world and our approach to life is so fundamentally different. We will never find middle ground. And it's just the way that we try to make meaning of what is happening. And, when this starts to happen, it really changes the emotional climate of a relationship. So, in earlier stages, a couple can be having fights, or doing a little bit of the pursue withdraw thing. But there are also moments of fun, connection, positive things happening in a relationship. But when negative narratives start to take hold, it's even in times when things are okay, like nothing bad is happening, you still don't feel good about your partner because you have begun believing negative things about them that damage your trust, that damage your hope in things ever being different. Like, it sort of feels like hopeless, I guess, or resigned is maybe a better word. Like, I have come to the conclusion that this person is XYZ, therefore, I need to change my expectations about what is possible here. And that's a sign that a relationship is in very, very serious trouble. When I hear one person saying that in couples counseling, I know that this is quite serious, even if their other partner is still being avoidant or dismissive. I'm like, listen, buddy, this is a lot more serious than you think it is. You have one chance to fix this, and I'm very happy to help you, but you need to take this seriously. I have literally had that conversation with people before. I'm that kind of couples counselor. Anyway, so, but that is a major warning sign. Take it super seriously. And if you are feeling that way, that your partner is fundamentally flawed or fundamentally incompatible, or if your partner is saying things that indicate they are thinking or feeling that, make an appointment. The best marriage counselor you can find yesterday. And if you do this, know that you may literally only have one chance to repair this. Do not work with anyone who is not a licensed marriage and family therapist. Most counselors who are providing air quote couples counseling do not have specialized training and experience in couples and family therapy, and it makes a huge difference on outcomes. Avoid a licensed psychologist, an LPC, an LCSW, anyone who isn't a licensed marriage and family therapist, unless you see in their website, or if they tell you that they have had extensive postgraduate training and experience in couples and family therapy, because like the ideas that I'm talking about even to you today on this podcast are not ideas or ways of interpreting or working with relational dynamics that are taught to mental health professionals who are not marriage and family therapists. And I say this as somebody who is a licensed psychologist. So the things that I'm talking to you about today, I did not learn in a 4-year graduate program in clinical psychology at the PhD level. Did not learn any of this. I learned this through a different graduate program, which was in marriage and family therapy, where the coursework was different, the training experiences were different, and I had supervision, mentorship, clinical hours specifically in couples and family therapy. That is the only reason why I know these things. If I had just done the PhD, would not be talking to you about this stuff. So be very, very careful about who you go to for help in these moments. Okay, getting off my soapbox now. But the other super serious warning sign that can actually be easy to miss, but that I really want to mention before we wrap this up, is if you have been experiencing the things that I'm talking about in the relationship, particularly that pursue-withdraw cycle, and then the fighting stops. Like if it's sort of eerily quiet, so maybe somebody who had been critical and contemptful and, hear all the things that are wrong and fighting with you, when they stopped doing that, that is actually one of the biggest warning signs of all. It means that they have actually given up and that they are potentially actively making other plans. When people are going through the process of figuring out if they really should be leaving a relationship, and I know this because I've had these conversations with individual clients who are married, and they're like, I don't think this is going to work. They're often quite ambivalent for a while, but it's a lot of conversations around, here are all the things that I've tried. Here's what is just not possible. I think that this is who my partner is. I think that my future is better if I just cut my losses and do something else. When people are in that space, their attention, their energy is elsewhere. They're not fighting with you anymore. They're trying to figure out what to do. And it's like part of them no longer believes that fighting is going to change anything or matter. So why try? But if you're in a relationship where there's been that level of disconnect, that's like the widowmaker heart attack. If there's not a reason why you would have stopped fighting, please go talk to somebody, even if it's on your own, to see if there's anything that can still be done, or, try to have a courageous conversation with your spouse. Be like, you used to be really angry with me for these things, and we're not fighting anymore. And that is almost more concerning to me. Why is that? And if their response is, it doesn't matter anyway, that's just super serious. So anyway, and at that point, sometimes that it has crossed the line of no return. And, even then, there is one more kind of couples counseling that is a specialized thing. Most, even marriage and family therapists, haven't had training or experience on this modality, but there is something called discernment counseling. Can also be conceptualized through a coaching model, so discernment coaching, where the premise of this kind of couples counseling or coaching is that two partners are in different places in terms of their commitment to the relationship. One partner is often leaning out, may still be somewhat ambivalent, but is kind of thinking that they don't want to do this anymore. That would be the leaning out partner. Versus a leaning in partner, which is often the partner who did not realize how serious these problems were until it was getting to the point of no return. They would be the leaning in partner. They're all of a sudden like, oh, wow, I don't want this relationship to end. What do we need to do? So now they are newly motivated and interested in making change in the relationship. But this kind of couples counseling or coaching is not for the purpose of trying to repair a relationship. And if you attempt this kind of repair-oriented couples counseling, if you have two partners with different agendas, it will not work. And that can be one of the things that will sabotage marriage counseling, is if you try to repair a relationship, that requires two people being actively committed to making change in the way they think, they feel, they behave in a relationship. And if one of those partners does not want to do that, or is 100% convinced that this is all your problem and your fault, relationship repair in that sense isn't possible. So in discernment counseling, the goal is simply to help two people get clarity about what it is that they want to do. How committed are you? How ambivalent are you? Do you still have enough here that you might be willing to try this for 3 months, really actively try to repair the relationship for a period of time? And if so, what specifically needs to be happening differently in order to show you that hope and change are possible? So what needs to be done? And then is there a willingness to do that? And sometimes the answer is no. We've been torturing each other for long enough, and I would have to make so many changes in my fundamental way of being and thinking and feeling that I think I don't want to do that. That's okay. Because there's clarity there. There's resolution. And by being able to have these constructive conversations, even with somebody who's about to be your ex, it leads to a much more positive, productive ending of a relationship. It in itself can kind of be healing. It can provide clarity, closure, so that you guys can have a different relationship maybe going forward, which is particularly important if you're co-parenting together, right? And the other thing is that many times through discernment counseling or coaching, people have autonomy, they have control, they can make informed decisions about what would be involved to see if the relationship is reparable. And most of the time, people are willing to at least try. And at that point, healing can be possible, but it really requires a lot of consent and an active understanding of what's going on. But I think too also, a recognition that for many people, they legitimately don't understand how bad things have gotten until it is at that kind of crisis moment. And I sincerely hope that by listening to this podcast today and hearing about, what relationships look like and feel like when they are failing, it has helped you understand what to be watching out for, what to be taking very, very seriously, and what to do about it if you are experiencing those things in your relationship, namely getting good help and also doing it sooner rather than later. I've mentioned this before, but my husband and I, when we were first married, went through a difficult patch where, some of these things did happen. They were starting to happen. And thankfully, we connected with a really nice marriage counselor. And we only worked with her for, 8 sessions, 10 sessions. But, it was soon enough that we still fundamentally loved each other. There was goodwill, there was commitment, there was a desire for the relationship to be better. And so because of that, we could have constructive conversations with her. We were both able to follow through with things. I think there was still enough emotional safety that both he and I were able to reflect on how our own way of being was negatively impacting the other. And because of that, humility, be able to, change some things on each side of our process. And because of that, it was very productive and helpful. But, imagine fast forwarding 3, 4, 5 years where so many regrettable things had happened. There isn't the commitment anymore. There isn't the goodwill. There isn't the fundamental trust. There isn't the level of emotional safety that's required to be I think accepting and taking responsibility for how you've been showing up in the relationship because you've been hurt so badly that, it's like you've just been responding in the only way that you can, when there's a self-concept that how you've been showing up in the relationship is self-protective because you've been victimized to the degree that you have been, right? That makes it very, very hard to try to do things differently in service of another. So not waiting too long is a vitally important ingredient. And in my experience, one of the biggest barriers to people not getting help that they need sooner rather than later is either, as we've been talking about today, not realizing how serious things are, but also this myth that happy, healthy couples don't get involved in couples counseling. The only time people do couples therapy or marriage counseling is if things are really, really bad. Like those ideas, that mindset is incredibly destructive and dangerous to relationships because if you believe that, it will prevent you from taking proactive, positive action to learn and grow and, figure out how to have a better relationship with each other, learn the skills that nobody's going to teach you otherwise. So the new mindset I would like to offer you is that healthy, happy, strong couples are that way because they get into marriage counseling and couples therapy sooner rather than later. That is why they're doing as well as they are. It is, getting into couples counseling is not a symptom of something being wrong, unless you do wait until it's too late. What it is a symptom of your commitment, the strength, the level of hope that you have. And so I hope that you take that away from this podcast. So thank you for listening to this today. I hope that if your relationship has been feeling hard, that this was insightful and instructive. Please think about people that you love and care about that you might send this to. And also take advantage of all the resources that I have for you on my website, growingself.com. If you go to the blog and podcast section, there is the Love collection. And then from there, you will find all kinds of different content collections that I've put together for you on different subjects. There is a relationship repair collection. There is a growing together collection. There is I think it's actually called Communication That Connects. So you could check that one out. There is also, if you are in that place of questioning of your relationship, there is I think we're calling it Relationship Clarity Collection that has other podcasts on the subject of, when is it too late? That's where you'll find the Discernment Counseling podcast. You can check that out. But anyway, all of those things are there for you. And then in addition to the blogs and the podcast articles, there's also that knowledge base that I shared with you around when to get marriage counseling and other just informational articles. Can you use insurance for marriage counseling? How long does marriage counseling take? How do you find a good marriage counselor if you'd like to educate yourself more around what to look for in order to make sure you get connected to the right person? So I hope that all of those resources are helpful for you. And I hope that this was helpful too. So thanks again for listening, and I'll be back in touch next week with another episode.
It's getting old, I know. I'll hold your hair back when you're sick. It's getting old.